to the Mavs Fans for Life podcast. I am Landon Thomas, joined by my co-host Shahnavaz Makhani. Shahnavaz, just breathe. Just breathe. So since the last podcast, the Mavs have lost their last 3 games against the Nuggets, against the Warriors, and against the Jazz. Obviously, when we recorded last week's podcast, they just came off a 1-point loss to the Suns. So not even just losing these last 3 games, they're losing it within seconds. You know, it comes down to 1 possession games. They lost to the Nuggets by 2, lost to the Warriors by 3 in Clay's return, and lost to the Jazz by 2 in their most recent game. Shahnavaz, we predicted the Mavs to bounce back because it felt like that Suns game was so low where they would just have a bounce back, but they really did not. Lively was inserted in the lineup against the Jazz, and he had foul trouble, which we talked about the last few podcasts. You know, everyone wants to finally see Lively start, including us. You know, he finally played better, and then he goes back to his old ways when he started last year. You know, early foul trouble, and it just carries over for the rest of the game where you really don't see an impact. So, Shahnavaz, there's so much things that you can talk about in these last 3 games, but what sticks out to you the most when you look at this team?
You know, first off, I think you're talking 4 games of, that the Mavericks have lost with a combined 8 points, right? These are games that they win last year. And, you and I were talking before the pod. I mean, there's a variety of reasons as to what's going on. You can blame officiating, if you want, because there's some questionable calls, especially in the Phoenix game, especially in the Denver game, what was it? Was it the Golden State game where they called the offensive foul on Daniel Gafford, or the defensive foul on Gafford and ignored the push in the back, But I mean, number one, I think the Mavericks miss PJ Washington. I think we underrate what he brings to this team defensively. He's now with Derrick Jones Jr. gone. He's arguably your best perimeter defender, and so you're asking a lot of guys to guard players that they wouldn't normally guard. It just, man, I'm struggling because it's like losing to good teams happens, right? The way that the Mavs lost to Phoenix, to Denver, to Golden State, losing to good teams is going to happen, right? And it's going to fluctuate throughout the year. Wouldn't surprise me if the Mavericks win the next 3 against those teams. But losing last night to Utah is just failure. I mean, it's a failure top to bottom, and the effort was just bad. The effort was so disturbing to watch last night. I mean, you're talking about guys throwing passes off of backs of other players. I mean, just turnovers, all over the place. The defensive effort from Luka last night was one of the worst performances I think I've ever seen from him. And we've talked about, him being, the star player and kind of everything trickles down from him. I think you see with Kyrie out, Luka goes back to his old ways. So it also underscores the importance of Kyrie Irving, and I think Kyrie keeping Luka in check. But I mean, you cannot play defense like that. And you, if you go back and watch film from the other games, it's been pretty much all year Luka's played like that. You've noticed, I feel like now, especially after last night, thinking back to other games, Luka's letting, a lot of drive-bys go through. He's swiping at the ball, more as opposed to playing defense. The complaining is back. And look, he's a phenomenal player, right? Let's not, the blame is not solely on him, but when you're the star player and you're considered one of the top 5 players in the NBA, you're going to get the criticism that you deserve. We're here that's what we do. And it's tough. I mean, look, it's not just Luka, let's be honest, right? I mean, there's a lot of players are struggling. Najee Marshall can't hit a 3 to save his life. Dereck Lively is struggling, when he's starting in the lineup, to your point with the foul trouble, and kids' offensive possessions have been poor. And I think, for him, he's tinkering with the lineups. He's trying to figure out what's going to work because right now nothing is for this team. Yeah. And not having PJ, I think, is really critical because that kind of solidifies who your starting 5 are. And we've talked about the depth of this team, and missing PJ and Kyrie last night, you kind of really show the inexperience of these guys playing together. It's just bad all around, and it doesn't get easier because the Mavericks now have to play San Antonio. Wemby just went off for 50. Then you've got Oklahoma City. You've got Denver again this week. It's just they've got to turn this around quick, otherwise they're going to be in a hole that they might not be able to dig themselves out of.
Yeah, it's time to see what this team is made of. Obviously, you've said it. It takes a month or two to see where a team is at, and we're just now reaching that point where it's time to see where this team is at because, like you said, Luka is playing bad. He's playing the worst he has played since his rookie year, and that's tough to say because when you look at the stats, 29.3 points, 8 rebounds, 8 assists. He's shooting 42% from the floor, 32% from three. That's the best a regular player can dream of.
Yeah.
Like just for a stretch of 3 games, let alone a course of a season. And that's how good Luka is, where his expectations and his measure of greatness is so far up there where, if he's having a bad stretch of games, it impacts the Mavericks. And like you said, defensively, complaining, decision making, and
shot selection, like that
shot selection.
The Denver shot, like what was that? Like,
and those are the things that impact your team, overall, and it has to get corrected, because they're now 5-7, and I think they're 12th in the West now. If they beat the Spurs, they'll be 11th. But the West is so good right now, and we talked about it. I mean, I told you those sleepers, the Grizzlies or Rockets, but they're both playing well. Even with Morant out, and then the Rockets just with all the pieces that they have, they're starting to grow. It's just time to really hone in on your mistakes and correct them because, like you said, it's a tough week. The Spurs are playing really well. You just mentioned Wemby; he's starting to get into his groove, and and that's just the first game. Then you have the Thunder, which you mentioned as well. The Pelicans are always a sleeper, no matter what the record is against the Mavs, and then the Nuggets. I mean, those over the next week, those are tough games. And eventually you have to take care of business. Forget the NBA Cup. Like every single game matters.
Yeah.
And it's hard to say that in November, but it really does because the West is tough. And the Mavs have injuries. So you have to take care of business because, PJ is a big piece of this team, like you mentioned. Obviously, not only alone with his versatility, but he's the guy who gets offensive rebounds. He's the guy who makes the hockey pass. He's the guy who really is their mentality on the court. Just the toughness and the grittiness. He's really the identity of the energy of this team. And it sucks because you see it. Like you literally see it when he's off the court. And, it was already bad with Lively out, who's back now. But, with PJ, both those guys are really your energy. And we didn't even mention Gafford. I mean, Gafford, who as a starting big, well, now off the bench, he's probably the best big off the bench in the league, but he looks different. Like he gained 20 pounds to body those big guys in the league, but now he's slower. Now, especially defense, he's letting people finish at the rim. And last season, he was going straight up or he was blocking those guys. And that's another thing that is a wrinkle into the Mavs, I guess, underachievement so far in the season.
Yeah, it feels like they just can't catch a break. You look at the injuries. Obviously, you had the PJ injury, then the Lively injury. We know Exum's out. then Kyrie gets hurt. It's like it's kind of it's frustrating. But look, every team has injuries, right? This is the NBA. Like we were praising the depth of the Mavericks, and it's just not showing up.
Yeah.
And it's it's hard to kind of pinpoint what really is going on. I mean, you say what you will about anybody, right? I mean, it's on the players, it's on the coaching staff. It's really just kind of everyone is to blame at this point. And it's kind of like you just have to, I think the Mavericks just need to get a win under their belt and kind of have that confidence to go in and say, okay, we're back to what we want to do. And you and I were talking, and I'm sure you have the numbers there, but you look at across the board the Mavericks rankings, with other teams. I mean, it should give you hope that the eye test obviously tells you that they're playing poorly, but they're almost top 10 in every, in every category, and offensively and defensively. So they're clearly doing something right. It's just these end of game situations. I mean, it's frustrating. And a lot of it has to do with shot selection. To your point, the rebounding has been really bad. The foul trouble, the injury. It's like a whole perfect storm of all these issues kind of coming to fruition at the same time. And what is it going to take? Is it going to take a players only? Is Kyrie going to, as the leader of this team, is he going to have to, get everybody in shape and kind of talk it through? Is it Luka kind of taking more of an effort defensively? Like, I don't know. Is it there's a lot to say about Jason Kidd's offensive strategy as well. But at the same time, he's doing what he can with the lineup, so it's on everybody. And it's kind of like, until it turns around, I don't know how much worse this can get.
Yeah, if you look at the NBA advanced stats, you really look at offense rating, defense rating, and net rating. So right now, the Mavericks are 9th offensively. They are 12th defensively. They were 10th a little bit ago. And then now, when you look at net rating, there are 11. And when you look at the top 12 teams, it pretty much gives you what you want to see in the top teams in the league, which is funny because the Suns are 9-3 and their net rating is 14th. I mean, it's a lot of factors into who you play, schedule, how you play, but overall, when you look at the top 12 teams, the Thunder, Cavs, Celtics, Warriors, Grizzlies, Rockets, Magic, obviously Paolo impacts that, but they were playing really well before he got hurt. Knicks, Kings, who's been red hot lately, Timberwolves, who fell off, they're 500, Mavericks and Nuggets. So the only two teams under 500 in that top 12 is the Knicks and Mavericks, which is funny because they're projected top 2, top 3 teams in their conference. So you think, the Knicks and the Mavericks, who are in the same boat, Knicks 5-6, Mavericks 5-7, who've got off to slow starts, will eventually figure it out over the course of the season. But just going to your point with injuries, PJ Washington remains doubtful for tomorrow's game against the Spurs, and Kyrie Irving is not on the injury report, which is good, so he'll be available. And then Luka, who seems like he's been on the injury report every day the last
years.
week. Exactly. He's probable with that knee contusion for tomorrow's game. So, man, PJ, that's something to look out for with that knee sprain. How the Mavs are hush hush on the severity of it, but he remains doubtful. I mean, he's not out, but the last few games he's been doubtful. So that's some sense of concern.
Yeah, and he obviously, you brought it up. He's kind of your guy that brings the energy, right? And without him, you clearly see that this is a different team. And I don't know, they're still, it feels like trying to integrate Najee Marshall, but they're two very different players, Najee and PJ. PJ is a little bit more physical, I would say, and obviously a bigger guy and can, a better rebounder, and that's where the Mavericks are struggling. and look, give credit to Najee because even though the three's not falling, I think every other aspect he's been playing really well outside of the three ball.
If those threes were fall, he would be.
Eventually those are going to go in, and it's like the crazy thing is, you flip this on its head, and if the Mavericks win those 4 games, we're having a completely different conversation. And if you try to look optimistically, it's like, okay, clearly their rankings in terms of offense, defense, net rating, they're not, they're right there, top 10, in almost every measurable stat. They've lost all 4 of these games by 8 points. I think the worst part of it is how they're losing, right? I think that's what's more concerning to us.
Yeah.
If they were getting blown out, we'd be having a different conversation. I think we'd be. I don't know if what's the level of concern if that's the case, right? If they're getting blown out, but it's the fact that you're up by 11 against Golden State and you blow that lead, right? Clay hits a big 3 last night, then you lose John Collins, for an easy dunk. I mean, make it difficult. Najee misses the game-winning 3. Denver, you waste a amazing night by Kyrie. And it's kind of, I think it's how they're losing that's so concerning, because these are games that they could have won. They were in a position to win, and that's what's frustrating about it. But it's also, you flip the coin and it's like, that's also good in a way in terms of like why we should have hope going forward, because they've been right there, they've had the opportunity to win. It's not like they're getting blown out. But I completely get it, from the frustration aspect of being a Mavs fan. It's like, these were games you should have won. Let's be honest. You probably, okay, you lose the Phoenix game, but these last 3 games are games you should have won. Now you didn't, and now you're going to be playing catch up, until you can get back over 500, and hopefully the Mavericks can go on a run to make up some ground.
Yeah, it is. We also got to talk about the slow starts. I mean, that's been a constant every episode this season. I mean, we won't go into detail about it since we do it every episode, but that has to be addressed. Obviously, Kid tried a different lineup, out of necessity, with Grimes in there because of Kyrie. But like you said, he could have went with his safe blanket with Najee. He tried Maxey. He put in Lively instead of Gafford. He's trying. It's twofolds, right? I mentioned this last week. Like, yeah, Kid can do better with offensive, improvements with his schemes, his plays. And he's trying, I give him the benefit of the doubt because he is going back to Luka more. And that's what worked in the past. That's what's always worked with Dallas. So he's trying to go back to Luka more. Obviously, with PJ out, you kind of have to, because PJ was like a Sean Marion, get the rebound, just go up the floor. But, it also comes to a point where the players just have to play better. I mean, as a coach, you can blame Kid for the execution down the stretch, because they're this season a horrible clutch team, which, we've talked about. Their strength last year was being able to find a way down the stretch when you have Luka and Kyrie. And this year, it just has not worked. The execution, like you mentioned, 8 points in 4 games. That's to be demoralizing as a team, because you're doing the right things to be in position to win the games, but it's always the details, the small details that win you the games, and they're not doing that right now. It's like getting a foul at the end of a game and they get free throws, or getting, just a turnover in a crucial moment of the game where you can't do that. And I think that also boils down to Kid not having a set rotation. So it's a twofold. The players are not playing hard, but also Kid needs to find the rotation that works. But you also can't do that with injuries. So it's like there's so many things going on at once. But once PJ gets back, I would like to see them have a set rotation. Like Grimes needs to play. And Spencer and Hardy, just split their minutes or take one of them out of the rotation, because when they both play, there really is no chemistry, and there's a lot of turnovers. There's a lot of just over dribbling without any execution to the plays. So I think I tweeted this. I would like to see, when this team is healthy, I would like to see a lineup of Dončić, Irving, Clay, which we talked about. His shooting, you can't take him out of the lineup. And then also PJ Washington and Lively. Lively has to play better. Like, he has to figure out how to get rim protection without fouling. I know he tries with his hands up a lot, but you're not a veteran in this league. He's so good at what he does, but it's just always comes back to me with age. Like, he's 20 years old. I mean, when you're a veteran, you know what to get away with, and you know what the refs are going to call. Obviously, every game is different officiated, but you know how to play hard without fouling once you grow and mature in the league. But I would like to still see him start, because he is that good. He is your franchise center. He has all-star potential. He has all defense potential. Will he get there? I don't know, but his floor is really good. So I would like to see that 5, and then I would like to see a rotation of Gafford, obviously, Grimes, and then Maxey, because he can play stretch 5 when you need him, and play power forward and defense. When he's healthy, he looks good. And then Hardy. Oh, obviously Najee. Najee should be your sixth man. Najee should be your sixth man. He does everything. Once he gets those threes, he's going to be so good. And then Hardy until Exum is back. When Exum gets back, he takes that position. But I would like to see that rotation.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. I think the only thing I would, in my mind, I'm still hesitant to start Dereck Lively. I think he still needs to
You want to go back to Gafford?
Yeah, I mean, it's worked, right? Like, we've seen it work, and I think they played, Lively still plays more minutes, so I'm not saying, Gafford's got to play a lot more than minutes. I just think Lively brings that energy off the bench also, and I think when he's against the second units and when he can dominate that way, and then he still plays against first units as players are being subbed back in, I think he's got a confidence about him, and I think that helps when he's thrust into the starting lineup. A lot of times you're going up against some stretch bigs, and you're going up against NBA vets that probably they know that you're a rookie, and so they're going to take advantage of that. And so, or not a rookie, a second-year player, but I would still like to see Gafford. But I have no problems with what you said. I think that's exactly the right move. And to your point, yes, kids' offensive execution has been bad, especially late in the games, but Luka should not be taking a half-court 3 against Denver.
That is true. That is true.
It's just unexcusable. Drew up a great play for Najee last night. Najee just missed it, against Denver. Why is Kyrie taking a contested 3, a double team 3, with the shot before that? So some of it's on coaching, some of it's on the players. I think there's a lot of blame to go around, to be honest. And to your point, it's really hard to find that right mix and figure out what works. And Jason Kidd's come out and said it, that we're trying, when you bring in new players, you have to figure out what rotations work and who plays better with who. When you've got these injuries, that's the hard part. You miss PJ, Lively goes down, Kyrie's out. It's very difficult then to kind of figure out what works the best. You kind of just have to go with the flow and kind of figure it out in game. And that's why you saw Dwight Powell last night. You saw Maxey start last night. It's kind of like you just got to try anything to get some semblance of consistency and continuity. I think now that you've got Kyrie and Lively back, that's good. We just have to hope that PJ Washington's injury is not any more serious than what is being reported, and that he comes back sometime this week, because I think that's going to help a lot. And I think effort, Landon. I mean, this team is like, some of the mistakes are just dumb mistakes. Some of the turnovers are just really, really bad. Luka's defensive effort has just been atrocious the last few games. Like, it's really hard to watch sometimes. And we've talked about it. He's got to try harder on defense. Like, he's an all-world talent. we love him to death. He's a top 5 player in the league, but if he doesn't pick up his defense, he's not going to win MVP. I'll tell you that. He doesn't have to be, Bruce Bowen. He doesn't have to be Ron Artest. He just needs to be serviceable. Like, stay in front of your man. He's a big enough guy where he can defend a Jordan Clarkson drive and not jump one way and have Jordan Clarkson shake him out of his shoes like he did last night. Like, some of it's just effort. And I think the Mavericks have got to get back to how, whatever worked last year towards the end of the year, whatever the message was, that's what's got to be relayed now back to the players.
Yeah. And the beauty of that is they know that, because when you're like you said, if those 4 games went the other way, they would be 9-3. But I think obviously you try to find the positives in the chaos that we're in. I think they have the players in that locker room to do that. Just with the veterans and then the young players, they've been in the league for a while. Like PJ Gafford and those guys. It's all about trying to be healthy at the right time and giving yourself a chance, because you'd rather have them start this way than end this way.
Absolutely. Yes. It's good that it's happening now, right? Figure it out and, let's march forward.
Yeah. And you got to take it one game at a time. You can't see where the standings are at in November. But you also have to have a certain sense of urgency. Even though it is November, it is only 12 games in an 82-game season. You still have to have urgency, because your season might come down to 2 games between 3rd seed and 7th seed. The West is going to be tough. And the Mavericks might go on a 6-game win streak after this. You don't know. Like, you have to take it one game at a time, but you also have to fix your mistakes. And I think that's the biggest issue. You've mentioned a lot of them, but I think it's all of the above. Like, you can't do one thing and bounce back. Like, you have to improve across the board from all your players and the coaching staff. And this is the roster. Like, you have to figure it out. Like, you can go, simulate a season like 2K and go to the trade deadline so Nico can bring in 1 piece or 2 piece to help this team reach the top. But, some seasons you're not going to have any trades at all during the season, and you have to figure it out with this roster. So, I would like to see Luka play better. I would like to see Lively play better when he's starting, not only play good when he's off the bench. I would like to see Gafford get better defensively like he was last year when he was slimmer and more agile. I would like to see Grimes continue what he did against the Jazz in a defeat, in a loss. Continue that so you can show kid, hey, whatever's going on, you have to play me.
And his defense against Golden State was great. I mean, he started
against
off
Curry.
He was great.
Yeah. Yes. He was so great where Curry, that 4th quarter on that 12-3 run, he was going off of picks every play, with the ball or without the ball, because of Grimes.
And who was he hunting?
He was hunting Luka
every time.
And Lively.
Every time.
He was hunting Luka.
Yep.
And that's what I was saying. Luka has to get better. Obviously, the shot selection, but defensively, he has to get better, because we've seen him play good defense. It's not like he's a bad defender. It's just the will and the want to. I think Luka gets sidetracked. I think in when they play the Jazz, for instance, like you mentioned, he didn't play great defense, but when they play against the Thunder, I bet you he's going to play good defense. Like, I think
they're going to need him to, because that game might not be close if he doesn't.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, the Timberwolves, we saw better defense. I think it's who they play. You see flashes of good defense, not great or elite defense, just good defense, and you need that stretches, because maybe it's another thing. Maybe that's what Kid was saying. when the ball is not in his hands, he has more energy to play defense. He has more energy to play a whole game. He has more energy to play a duration of a season. So when you have the ball in his hands, that's physically exhausting on him to be locked in defensively.
True. That's true, but it's there's a difference between being locked in defensively and just no effort. And I feel like
Yeah,
that's what we're seeing.
agree.
It just doesn't it doesn't look like he's even trying, and that's the frustrating part. Is we've seen him do it, and whether it's, and I think Kid came out and said, look, there's personal stuff going on across the team. Things are, it's just a tough week, and maybe we attribute some of it to that. I mean, who knows, right? But I think at least Luka's just got to give some effort on defense.
Yeah,
We've seen him do it. It's not, this isn't something that we haven't seen. We've seen him lock in, and we've seen him do it before. He's just got to do it against every opponent, because now there's proof that, you can't just take a night off, even if it is the Jazz. The Spurs are coming you're going to have to play the Spurs tomorrow. Wemby just went for 50. I mean, who know, if you don't play defense, who knows what he can do, right? I mean,
yeah,
and then
that's
you got
true.
the Thunder. Like, the Thunder could blow you out of the water if you're not locked in. So they've got to figure this out pretty quickly, because the schedule doesn't do them any favors over the next week or two.
Yeah, and that's what goes back to my point. Like, they have to take it one game at a time. Just focus on the Spurs, and take them very seriously. Do not take them lightly like the Jazz. Like, they're playing good right now. Wemby finally got his rhythm offensively. So you got to protect your home court.
Mm-hmm.
The Mavs are 4-3 at home. I think the Spurs, I mean, I have to look it up, but I think they're like 2-5 on the road. So they're not a good road team. You have to make sure that you protect your home. And that's what sucks, because PJ is really good against Wemby. Like,
Mm-hmm.
he is a Wemby defender. Obviously, you love to see the Lively Wemby matchup, but it's really PJ who defends Wemby, because he has the length, he has the quick feet, and he has the physicality over Wemby. So Wemby likes to take a lot of perimeter shots against PJ, but they have to take care of business. Don't let them get threes, and just honestly start hot and give energy. Like you said, there's a difference of bad defense and no energy. That you have to try at least defensively, because this is a team defense. It's not a defense full of lockdown defenders. It's a team defense where they communicate, and sometimes they funnel the driving guard to their bigs. It's just a team defense. They need to get back to that.
Yeah, and I mean, PJ did a great job blocking out Wemby in the first game. So we've
Yeah.
seen him do it before. And unfortunately, he's not going to be there tomorrow night. So somebody's got to step up. Is it who you're going to put? Is it going to be Gafford and Lively on Wemby? Are you going to go small and maybe put Najee, or is this a Maxi Kleber game? Where you put Kleber on Wemby for the majority of the night. So it'll be interesting to see, but they've got to get back on track here pretty quickly.
Yeah, they do. Shahnavaz, I mean, obviously we looked at their schedule last week, and we thought they would have a better bounce back. With those 8 chapters I have, it was 5-5 the first 10 games. They start 0-2 in the second 10 games. What do you see from this team? Obviously, you can count injuries, but do you see this team having the pieces that they need if healthy?
Yeah, if healthy, I think so. I mean, I think we've talked about their depth. You have 2 all-world players in Kyrie and Luka. You've got, this arguably with one of the top 3 shooters of all time on your team. I think this team has the pieces necessary. Maybe some minor tweaks here and there come trade deadline, but I think for the most part, you've got the pieces necessary to be a legit NBA contender. We saw it last year; they made the finals. So
But how many games do you give it though? Like, okay, so they're 5-7. It's only 12 games, yeah, but how many games do you give it? Do you give it 20? Do you give it 30 to see what you have in this team?
Yeah, I mean, I think 2025, and that goes right into December, right? Which I've always said I wait until December to start truly evaluating because I think, especially when you're integrating new players and there's a lot that goes into it: early season injuries, lack of training camps, things like that. I give it about 20, 25 games. So Mavericks have about 2 weeks to kind of right the ship here, in my mind, before I at least I start getting overly concerned.
Yeah, and it feels like, let's just say for the last 3 years, I agree with you. I mean, obviously with our predictions for the team, but I agree that they have the pieces in place. I think they're really trying to figure it out, because it's a different type of team where they don't have a lot of guys who just stand on the corner and wait for threes. They have a lot of guys who have the ball. Like you see Najee, he has the ball a lot. Klay Thompson, he's changed his game a little bit, where he's not a catch and shoot. That is his bread and butter, but you see him dribbling and driving a little more than he did in Golden State, which is kind of cool to see. Um, but you have guys who are being implemented, especially Grimes. He can dribble too. So like you don't have guys who are just catch shooters and go defend. Like always worry about just wait for Luka's pass. You don't have those type of guys. So it does take time. I agree with you. I think you'll see where this team is truly at. Um yeah, around 25 games in an 82 game season, and really 30 games if you want to be honest, where you can say, okay, it's been 30 games, now let's panic.
Yeah,
Now let's get ready for see what some trades are and all that stuff. But they've been right there. Like we just mentioned the advanced stats. They're really right there. They're just bad in the clutch. So once they figure out the last 2 minutes, really last five, but they've been losing the last 2 minutes of games.
yeah.
Um, then they will take some of these. And I think it's at this point where Mavs aren't frustrated. I mean, obviously you want to win, but I think they're just at the point where let's just turn this thing around.
Yeah,
You
let's
know,
get our S together.
yeah, let's just and I think that's what I was saying. I think they have the players in that locker room. There's not a lot of immature guys in that locker room. There's a lot of guys who have won in this league, or young guys who won last year. So they
Yeah.
know what it takes to win. They just have to do it. And
Yep.
that's the thing.
100%.
All right, Shahnavaz. So last word for this pod. um
Hey,
let's end it with some positive. Is let's end it with positive with Kyrie Irving. The good thing is he is back,
thank God.
and he's having a monster type of season, but it's being overshadowed by all the concerns, injury, clutch, and slow starts with this Mavericks team. But my goodness, Kyrie Irving is going off this season, and I'm talking about efficiency. He's averaging 25.2 points per game, 4.9 assists, 4.6 rebounds, 1.5 steals. But I'm talking about efficiency. Efficiency. He's shooting 54.5 from the floor and 54.1% beyond the
Jeez.
arc. Like, give the brother some more
Dominant.
shots. I
Dominant.
mean,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
because he's only averaging, well, I say only, but he's averaging 17.4 shots a game. Like you would want to see him shoot a little more, especially at the beginning of games and at the end of games where the Mavs are struggling.
Yeah. And I think you'll see that happen. I think they're still trying to, get everybody integrated, right? And I think we've seen some of the frustration, early in games that we talk about the slow starts. I think you're trying to get Clay more involved, get Najee involved, things like that. They just got to go back to the way they were playing last year. Like the role players will fit in. They're just pieces. Put the ball in the hands of your superstars, let them go to work, and let your ancillary pieces be, kind of the secondary guys that can take over when necessary.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think they're I agree on that. Just saying that they're trying a little too hard to implement Clay, um, just for his stature in the league. what he's done in his career. But what has worked was Kyrie and Luka going off. And I know that's hard to do over a course of a season. You want them to be healthy in the playoffs. But you got to go back to what works and what got your team good, because that is how you start games and that's how you finish games, with those two guys. And like you said, when those two guys are going off or finding their shot, because they can find their shot when they want. Obviously, Luka he's been inconsistent this season, but he'll eventually get it. He's Luka. He'll eventually get it. If you start with those two guys, everybody else is going to fall into place. Everybody else is going to get their shots because the defenses are going to collapse on those two guys. But you have to make sure that is the strategy of the team. Start those two guys early, get them going, and then other guys will get open shots. It's that simple.
Easy.
All right, so we'll see how they do this week. Like I said, when you look at their schedule, they have the Spurs, they have the Thunder, they have the Pelicans, and the Nuggets.
Oy.
We'll see how they do over the course of the week, but we want to say thanks for tuning in and the continued support of this show, and also the YouTube, and just overall. You can follow us. You see our socials, and we appreciate y'all tuning in. Thanks. Goodbye, everyone.